When growing potatoes, there's a lot to consider, right? Preparing the soil, the best ways to water, and when to harvest your potatoes. Now there's one thing that almost every gardener, me included, has to deal with at some point or another, particularly when your potatoes get closer to harvest. So listen up, because what you do before planting your potatoes can determine if your harvest will be a good one or a bad one. Hi, I'm Marion Owen, the gardener's coach. Today I'm going to answer some questions about growing potatoes, and I'm going to share the 2 reasons why I think I'm not going to have a good potato harvest this year. So get ready to take notes. Here we go. Now, I haven't harvested any of these potatoes yet, but I can tell by looking at the plants that I will probably end up buying potatoes this winter. And like I said, there are 2 reasons for why I think it'll be a bad year for my homegrown spuds. Before I forget though, be sure to download my free tip sheet. It includes my 2 favorite potato recipes, and one of them has chocolate in it. Back to why I don't expect a good harvest. First, this spring, I amended the soil in most of our raised beds with compost, and that's great, but some of it was pretty rich in nitrogen material. And as you can see by the plants, I probably added too much of this compost. Because if we look over here, behind the plants, you can see that the plants are really tall. Now I understand we have the height of the raised beds, which makes the plants look taller, but what's really happening here? I'm thinking that it has to do with the abundance of nitrogen, which is fabulous for heavy feeders like broccoli, tomatoes, cucumbers, celery, and peppers, but for root crops like potatoes, carrots, and turnips, or even for nasturtiums and strawberries, too much nitrogen is not your friend. In the case of root crops, say carrots for example, they tend to develop forked roots, which can be somewhat amusing, right? As for potatoes, you get too much top growth at the expense of tuber formation. Now the good side is that these potato plants have really strong stems. And that's great because we had a gale blow through just the other day, heavy winds and rain, pelting rain, and still you can see they remained upright. Now this would not be the case had I been growing them in a high nitrogen chemical fertilizer, because high nitrogen chemical fertilizers, plants growing in such conditions tend to have weak and almost squishy stems. Then you'd end up with what I call couch potato plants, pardon the pun. Second, and this has to do with the compost itself. One of the advantages to using compost is that it naturally neutralizes the soil and brings it into balance. For example, when I planted my first raised bed some 35 years ago, the soil pH was very low, pretty acidic. I think it was around 4.5 or something. That's great for blueberries and rhododendrons, but not for lettuce. But when I started adding compost to the soil, it brought the garden soil into balance, which is around 6.5 or 7 on the pH scale. Now for most home garden crops, like peas, zucchini, cucumbers, and tomatoes, a pH of 6.5 is satisfactory for the most part, but for potatoes, a pH of 6.5 or 7 is too sweet or alkaline. Now, what's wrong with soil that's more alkaline than acid? It sets you up for harvesting potatoes that become dotted with scab. Scab, which looks like corky lesions on your potatoes, is caused by a bacteria that occurs naturally in most soils. That said, let's bust a myth here and now. Scab is not caused by varieties of potatoes. It's in the soil. But this doesn't mean that all potatoes end up with scab, right? You see, just like us, the bacterium Streptococcus pneumoniae, hope I pronounced that right, is commonly found in the nose and throat. But it doesn't mean we walk around with pneumonia all our lives. But when the right conditions prevail, that's when we succumb to it. Now in soil, given the right conditions such as higher pH or soil that's too wet or chunky, this creates the conditions where the bacteria that causes scab flourishes. This doesn't mean your potatoes are inedible, but here's the thing. They won't store as well, and they don't look very pretty on the dinner plate. So, lesson learned? No doubt. I will be really surprised if I get a good harvest from these plants with such tall foliage. But I will keep you posted as to what happens. So there you have it. 2 reasons why your potato harvest might not meet your expectations this year. If you found this video helpful, do me a favor, okay? Give it a thumbs up by subscribing to this channel. And if you have any questions or comments, or maybe suggestions for topics you'd like me to cover in a future video, let me know in the comments below. I read all the comments, so this would be great. Meanwhile, this is Marion Owen, the Gardener's Coach, and I'll see you in the next video. All the best in your gardening. Cheers!